I'm so excited for our lunch and learn today. We're here to talk about how to find purpose and alignment within a mentoring relationship. And I know it's a fascinating topic because obviously as an executive, we're in these mentoring relationships for a reason. We're obviously someone who is purpose driven. This is a lunch and learn all about how we can go about being more intentional about that. We've got an incredible guest today. Our guest is Adenike Makinde. Adenike is a purpose coach. So Adenike has helped executives essentially find purpose and connection in their work by providing positive and reinforcing lenses in which to view their work, as well as helping them redefine and repurpose their teams to build a culture that is all about finding purpose. Because ultimately, if you can motivate your team to be purpose-driven, they're going to be willing to drive through brick walls for you. And that is ultimately the kind of cultures we want to build, are people and teams that are around us that would do anything for us. And that, essentially not necessarily no amount of money, but it would take a whole lot more money to drive them away from us because they love working with us. And the purpose behind that is what is so critical. Adenike is an expert in that. So Adenike, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Garrett.
So I'd love to ask you, I guess maybe get started. How did you get into this type of work? Why does focusing on purpose, why is it so important to you?
Yeah, well, it's really important to me because, again, I've had that personal experience in life. Again, I started out in corporate America, straight out of college, was ready to climb that corporate ladder. And I did. I went in and, every job that I ever went for, I got it. I was always billed a top performer, always, did the work of 2 to 3 people. But what I started to notice is that, while I was building someone else's vision, I wasn't always able to really, it didn't align with a lot that I had in my heart. There were so many ideas and so many things that I wanted to do in the world. And when I would present those ideas, a lot of times I was asked to dumb them down, or I was asked to conform to something else. And after many years of that, really just came to a place where I'm like, if I'm ever going to do what I feel like I was put on this earth to do, I'm really going to have to go a different directions. And so literally just kind of went through a season where I went very, very hard after my purpose. And it was through that I actually came up with, 7 components in a program that I created that really allowed me to, define what my purpose was and go after that. And so I started building my business a few years ago, went full-time last year, and now I'm doing it full-time, as a purpose coach and a career strategist.
That's awesome. And that's really cool and fascinating, because I think as an executive watching this right now, we might be thinking to themselves, I would never want to build a culture that stifled innovation. I never want to dumb people down, kind of as you put it. How can we be more intentional about, and by the way, there's like 2 sides of the coin. One side, we want to be focused and intentional about the time that we're spending at work and how we're spending it effectively. At the other time, we want to be open to innovation and opportunities to allow our people to grow. How can we strike that fine balance as an executive to empower our team to be both purpose-driven but also productive?
Absolutely. And I like the way that you put that. How can we strike that balance? Because it is, in fact, a balance. At the end of the day, when you're leading an organization, you have a goal, you have a vision, and you have to get that done. So first of all, I think it comes, right on the front end when you're hiring people, just understanding, you really have to understand, what does it take from a values perspective in order to get where I'm trying to go, and make sure that you're hiring people not just for, the single skill, but for who they are holistically, values that they line up with that, because then that this is the type of person that is really going to not only help you grow your business and drive your business, but at the end of the day, they're going to really help you get to the next level. So I think it starts on the front end. And then I feel like when you bring people in and they've clearly proven themselves, then that's the time to, again, you have to say to yourself, hey, it's not just about control. There are a lot of brilliant minds out here. Mine is not the only one. And so you have to, at some point, have a process in place where you open the door and say to people, okay, how do you see this company being better? What are some things that we can do that you feel will help us go to the next level? And just really appreciate that everybody has brilliance, no matter what part of the organization they tend to work in. And if you really value that, if you really value people as innately valuable and brilliant, then you'll understand that they have something to add. So I feel like once they've come in, they've proven that, yes, this is the type of person that can really take me to the next level. They've already obviously clearly shown that they have initiative, they have drive, they have ambition, they're innovative. Then there comes a point when you actually have a process in place where you allow them to actually take what what they want to do and go for it. And so that means that, yeah, you're probably going to have some failures along the way. You're probably going to have some seasons where maybe things don't always work out, but you have to be comfortable with the fact that in order to be truly innovative and truly grow, that means allowing people to fail. If I could just give you a quick analogy, I mean, I'm a mom, and there are certain things when your kids are coming along and you're trying to raise them, you want them to get it, and you feel like, wow, why haven't they gotten this yet? I keep telling them, I keep allowing them these opportunities, but when you allow them, you keep allowing them the opportunities to make some mistakes. Eventually they do come along and they do learn, and then you get this amazing, productive person that you've had the opportunity to nurture and bring along. So if you think about it in that context, yeah, mistakes will be made. That is a part of growing any organization. But if you're willing to take that risk with people, you're going to get far more out of it than you would ever lose.
That's a really cool way of putting it. I think it makes me think of the story of, well, I guess I'll share this story. So it makes me think of a company that's blown up. I mean, I know, by the way, as an executive, of my own company, I need to make my own mistakes. Sometimes, like I absolutely have mentors, and they'll say, "Hey, Gary, you really shouldn't go down this path." And sometimes I'm like, you know what? It just seems like this path will work. I feel like I need to fall on my face to try it. And I think all the executives watching this right now can absolutely relate to that. Sometimes, even when people tell you don't do it, and you do it anyways, it reinforces that you're like, okay, you're right, I get it. But sometimes we end up discovering it was a path that we could have actually gone down that worked out this direction. Maybe it was a product of timing, when maybe someone else, a mentor, had said, hey, it didn't work for me. It was maybe a few years ago, and maybe a few years ago the landscape wasn't ready for that. So I can totally see what you're saying of needing to sometimes fail to get there. I know Google's got their 20% time. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating that every executive that's in this program set up 20% time, but when a member of their team comes to them with an idea, kind of look at the cost-benefit analysis of just being able to take a little time away from what they normally were working on to allow them to explore this idea, because it could be a huge opportunity. It makes me think of the story of Twitter. So back in 2003, Evan Williams started this company called Blogger.com. And Blogger.com sold to Google for hundreds of millions of dollars, made a bunch of money. And in 2004, he then started another company called Odeo. It was branded as audio blogs, essentially being able to listen to a blog. And he really thought this was going to be a new form of media that would take off. But in 2005, something happened. Something unprecedented happened. Because, by the way, these audio blogs were not a popular thing at the time. But Apple decided that they were going to invest a ton of money, tens of hundreds of millions of dollars, into this new medium of audio blogs, and they called it podcast. Evan was toast. He had nothing. They were done. They did not have the funding to compete with Apple in these audio blogs. Obviously, podcasts are what they are today. It's incredible. But finally, as he got down to the ropes and he looked at his funding, he looked at where he was at, he was like, we're either going to run out of money or keep it on this path that's not working, or we're going to have to find something else. But as opposed to him just meeting with his executive team and trying to come up with the decision by himself or with only a select handful of people, he actually created a hackathon. He went to his entire team and he said, hey, this is how much money we got. We don't think the direction of Odeo is where we're going to be in the future. We need to come up with something new. Everybody can submit their ideas in this hackathon. We're going to put it together and we're going to see what happens. Well, two of his people, one of which was a graphic designer, Biz Stone and Jack Dorsey, ended up coming together, and they ended up going back to their initial roots of Blogger.com, but miniature blogs, essentially a snippet that people could skim as opposed to a big blog that people would read. And it took off. Celebrities started using it. It ended up becoming Twitter. And Twitter is what we know today, huge multi-billion-dollar company. But the whole point of the story is that it shows an example of an executive empowering his people to come up with an idea, spend their time working on something that was different from what maybe their normal tasks were, and coming up with something extremely lucrative and valuable for the company. And so I think as an executive, we can do potentially better of empowering our people to come up with an idea. And so that makes me kind of almost think about the next question for you, Adenike, and that is, how can we help our team find purpose? How can we go about helping our team feel comfortable coming up to us and saying, hey, I've got this idea. What would you think about this? How can we potentially implement it?
Yeah. So, I mean, that that question could go 100 different ways for sure. I think the best example that I can give is an experience that I had with someone that I would consider a mentor in my career. Was at this position, and again, it was actually one of the better jobs that I had. A lot of variety. Really, I was enjoying it for the large part, but some things started happening within the organization that started to some bureaucracies and things started to come in, started to infiltrate our particular unit. And I started to feel it. I started to feel like, okay, I'm not, able to be as free as I was. I'm not able to kind of, do a lot of the things that I was interested in doing. And I remember my manager at the time, I guess, she had been observing me for a few weeks. And one day, during our one-on-one, just at the end of it, she just said, Adenike, how can I help you feel successful? That's the phrase that she used. And immediately I was able to share with her, here's some things that have been happening. And, this is how I thrive, when I'm able to, when I'm being given autonomy to really do things, and, you tell me what you need and just allow me to go out and get the solution in ways that feel right to me. That's how I thrive. And so I would just say, first of all, not just giving it lip service, but really paying attention, to see if there are shifts, in the mood or in, just kind of the general attitude of people that are around you. And when you see that happening, have a process in place. Again, I think it comes back to process in place where you can address that and just ask the question, don't come at them necessarily with, hey, your attitude has changed. But, if you were to say, hey, how can I help you feel successful? I'm noticing that you don't seem to be, you don't seem to be as into, or you don't seem to, be reacting in a way that you have in the past that has really shown me that you were feeling good about things and that you were really feeling successful. How can I help you to feel successful again? And really just asking that question honestly and allowing that person to really have that avenue to really express that, and then giving them some of that leeway. So again, I feel like it starts there by being willing to not just say, oh, you've changed, but hey, how can I help you feel successful? Just asking, those questions that really make it a positive thing, as opposed to, oh, you're not, perhaps the way you used to be, or something like that.
I think there's a lot of power in that question of how can I help you. One thing we kind of glossed over that I think we probably should retouch on is, why is purpose even important? Why is it even important to even think about our own purpose as well as our team's purpose, and that they're finding purpose within their work? Why is that even important?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Well, and I think from the vantage point of an executive, obviously, every business has to have a purpose. I mean, you're in business because there's there's a problem that has to be solved, and your job is to come on board and make sure that, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not just about making money, because if it was just about making money, there are many illegal ways to just go out and make a lot of money. So people are not just about making money. People are about making their mark in the world, about leaving, a legacy, behind, about building something that's going to last, building something that's going to help people. So, having purpose is super important, because again, the world's going to be changing every 10, 20 years. The world's going to be changing. If you're stuck and locked into, this is the way it has to be done. Again, we've all seen leadership styles change. We've seen industries change. We've seen job titles change. We've seen, all of these things are happening. If you don't have a clear purpose behind what you're doing, then when these external things start to happen, then you no longer have a purpose, right? Because if my purpose was just to, whatever that looks like, I could come up probably with 100 different examples, but if my purpose was just to be an HR manager, or to, reach, the level of VP of, let's just say an event planning company, these days, if that was your purpose, to just have a title of VP of event planning, then you're in a lot of trouble, right now. And so you have to have a purpose that underlies, all of those external titles, all of those external things, so that at the end of the day, you can regroup and say, well, my purpose is actually to help people find new experiences that bring a lot of life and joy into their family. And so if that's the case, how can I now regroup and go find that? So again, that was just a kind of generic example, but purpose is super important, because it is the ongoing thread that never goes away throughout your lifetime when you have it.
That's a really good point. That's a really good way of putting it. Let's talk about purpose as an executive. I know I personally felt this, and that's burnout. It's, you were doing a certain activity or an exercise for a certain reason, and then things change. The market changes, life changes, business changes, your team changes. There are change happens. It's natural. And it can feel sometimes like we don't necessarily know if we're making the right decisions. We're kind of like experimenters. We're mad scientists, just trying new things all the time to see if one of them works better than others. And it can be exhausting. And it can also potentially cause us to blur our own lines of where our purpose is. Do you have any exercises or tactics that we as business leaders can leverage to help us, I guess, realign our purpose, look at what our old purpose was, almost do a purpose audit and be like, okay, how's my purpose changed, and how can we go about getting back onto track of feeling better, happier, more excited about the things that we're doing?
Yeah, purpose audit. I kind of like that one. Well, I think, like I said, at the end of the day, the thing that really all purpose comes back to me, it comes back to self-reflection. It really comes back to, what are the, the core things that are, that are really pretty solid, foundational for me. So like I said, there are several things that seven things that I have personally gone through and that I take my clients through, which has to do with, gifts and talents, skills. It has to do with values, personality, the people that you were meant to serve, unhooking from limiting beliefs, really understanding what your limiting beliefs are, and dealing with those. If you keep coming back to those exercises, so like I said, I literally have formal exercises that I take people through. If you keep coming back to those exercises and just say, from a values perspective, when everything else goes away, these are my 3 to 5, this is never going to change. Or, if it does change, if you keep revisiting those particular areas, then you'll know when it changes. You'll know the moment that it changes. And so I would just say you have to have some core areas that you're constantly evaluating in order to see, is this still steady or has this changed? And when things start to, shift in that area, then you can say, okay, I see that I'm evolving here. Let me go ahead and make some shifts and some changes in the way that I do things. But I feel like, yes, you can't just go with the flow, because the flow is always going to change, and that's how you're going to lose yourself. But again, if you keep coming back to those core areas of your life that you're evaluating and making sure that, yep, this is hardcore where I need to be. The example that kind of comes to my mind immediately as we're talking is, during this season that we're in, I live in the state of Indiana, and I remember when the governor came on and they were asking all these questions about, what was his criteria for, reopening the economy. And he just consistently said, and he said this over and over again, he said, my North Star, is our ability to be able to, handle, a patient influx, a certain number of ventilators and a certain number. He had 3 criteria. And every time he comes and does a press conference, he said, this is my North Star. As long as this is holding steady or decreasing, we are on track. And I felt like that was a great example of purpose, because again, there's a lot going on right now in the United States when it comes to this particular area. And, a lot of different people are using a lot of different criteria. You have to know what your criteria is for making the move that you're about to move so that you can stay on track.
Whoa, I think that was profound. I think that was a brief golden nugget. That's like a rewind. You just said something really profound there. I think everyone, let's look back on this example really quickly. You mentioned one, not only here's an example of a leader who had a purpose and has a purpose, but 2, that openly shared it with everybody. Everybody knows what the governor is about. Everyone knows what he's about. And that is so critical, because as a leader, as an executive, it can be so easy if someone's working with you and working for you, it can be so easy for them to potentially be left frustrated or left empty if they felt like they were working on something they felt would fulfill your purpose, but in reality didn't, because you didn't share it with them. The power of clarity and actively communicating what your purpose is so critical as a leader. I know I was reading the book, Building a Story Brand, and one of the interesting things they said was, like, when someone goes to your website, they should know immediately what you do. It should be a very simple, like, this is what we do. And that's something that I took to heart. But I feel like as a leader, when it comes to your purpose for why you exist, and this is your company's purpose, but your personal purpose of, like, what makes you happy, making it very clear that everybody in the company, everybody outside of the company knows why you do what you do. And if you don't know what your why is, maybe that's something you can work on with your mentor to kind of like hash that out and clarify that, because it's okay if maybe you don't have a fully flushed out why, or that maybe your why 3 months ago is different than what your why is right now. It's okay.
Absolutely.
So am I onto something, Adenike, with that? I just thought what you said was very profound. I thought the example was incredible. And it shows, because the fact that it had made such a big impact on you, a casual bystander viewer of what the governor is doing, shows that this person has clarity. And if that's the case, if this governor's got clarity, I mean, as leaders of our businesses, we can have clarity too about what our purpose is and what motivates our people. I think that was really powerful.
Yeah, no, and like I said, now that you say it, you're absolutely right, because like I said, he never moved off of those, and that just kind of stuck with me. This is my North Star. As long as we're here, we're good. And so to your point, and he communicated it over and over, to the extent that, any citizen, of our state knows kind of what those things are. And so, you're right, you hit the nail on the head. For a leader, to be able to say, yes, this is, our North Star. These are the areas that we must, if we are fulfilling these, we are on track. We are always on track. I think that is going to go a long way. And, not only helping you, know what that purpose is and communicate that to your staff, but again, you're going to reach that. You're going to reach that goal because everybody's on board. Everybody understands what's going on. It's the confusion that really brings on anxiety and stress and starts breaking down, I believe, cultures and organizations.
That's really interesting. This is very fascinating because it makes me think of another big point. Let's say we had a vision, we had a purpose, we had the thing that we're working towards, but now we need to realign it. Mm-hmm. Something's off. And obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic. So, maybe what we thought was how the business would run, or what we thought our purpose was a few months ago, is not the same anymore. How can we go about clearly, effectively communicating that to our team without frustrating them? Because I would imagine people inherently don't like change. Your team doesn't want to hear like, hey, I know that our purpose was this. I clearly communicated to everybody. We were all on the same page, changing things up. This is what we're going towards now. How can we do that while still making other team feel heard, or getting our team to continue to buy into what we're doing, while at the same time making effective change?
Yeah. Well, again, I feel like that question, it kind of goes back, because in my mind, I don't feel necessarily that I feel like there's an underlying purpose that always stays the same. I feel like methodology, techniques, change. I feel like there's even a season maybe of a pause where you have to do that. And again, the example that comes to my mind, again, I just kind of pull from my life experiences, is I have always known that international travel is a part of my purpose, a part of what I want to do in life. And it's just always been my North Star. Anything I do, I want to have the ability to be able to, travel internationally. When I had my children, I had to put that on pause. Okay. So something happened that interjected itself into my life that it became the priority, because at the time they were small. And of course I couldn't do, all of that traveling with them. And so I had to take a pause, and realign some things in order to get that priority in place. But it never left. And now the season has come back around in my life where I'm able to push forward with that. So I would just say, in terms of, when there comes a season where you have to maybe put something on pause. So if your goal was to hit some certain number, and now, external circumstances have come up that have made that almost impossible for you to do, then you have to say, well, what does the world need now? What is my priority now? And, how can I invest my time and energy into making this and into taking care of this particular thing right now? It still comes back to communication. At the end of the day, I think it's important to say, it's not that our purpose has changed. It's just that, when other priorities, come into place, you have to deal with what's in front of you. And so we're a flexible organization. We're adaptable. We've got to deal with what's in front of us so that we can move forward with the purpose. So again, I just feel like it's a situation where you just have to express that, adaptability is part of moving towards purpose. Evolving is a part of moving towards purpose. It's not that the purpose really has changed. It's just that we've had to make some adjustments to deal with situations that are right in front of us right now. So again, that comes back to communication. And if you've done things right in the beginning, if you've had a history and a track record of being the type of person who's a communicator and who's had a clear goal, then I believe your team is going to understand that. They understand that, hey, it is what it is. We got to deal with this. We can't ignore it. And so we're going to do what we need to do until we can get back on track to that long-term purpose.
This now makes me think of another idea, or another question rather. Let's say that our business changes and our purpose changes, and we communicate that effectively to our team. The two questions that come to my mind are, sure, we want to empower our team to come to us and say, hey, I think this is how we can solve this issue. But I can see two big objections that I've personally had with my team members when they've come up to me with ideas. Was one, when I've done something before, but maybe they'd never tried it, how to effectively communicate to them like, hey, I've done this before and it didn't work for me. I don't know if it is worth the time and resources to go ahead and pursue that route when I've tried it before in the past. The other alternative is the expense of like, okay, this is a great idea, but if we were to go ahead and do this, it would take a lot of resources, whether the time or money or a combination, to implement it, and there's not necessarily a guarantee that it's going to work. So how can we effectively potentially let our team members down that, like, hey, great idea, but like at this moment from a feasibility perspective, it isn't so feasible, or it's something we've done before and we don't feel confident that it would work again this time. Does that make sense? How do we go about communicating that as leaders?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking there. Again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. If you have a culture where, when you've hired a certain type of person, that this type of a person is going to be the type of person that loves challenges, loves, being able to add value to the organization, loves to innovate, loves variety. They love a certain type of thing. They have ambition, they have drive. You understand that that's the type of person that you've hired. Again, I feel like it doesn't have to be an either or type of scenario where, whatever they're presenting, you're saying, that's either not feasible or it, I've tried that and it doesn't work. Again, it goes back to that thing where, some people have to try things in order to understand it for themselves. And so I just feel like you have to have a process in place to allow a person to try it. Now, you have to obviously put guidelines around that and be able to say, you know what, I get what you're saying. Let me just share with you my experience. My experience has been that, I've done this, in this number of ways, and this was the outcome. It wasn't a favorable outcome. And then from a feasibility standpoint, again, we're not going to be able to, here's what you have to work with. So I feel like if you kind of set in place, here's what you have to work with. This is all there is to work with. So if you can make it happen with this, then go. But I feel like, letting them go and not just shutting them down. I think that's when the type of people that you bring on board, you have to give them the ability to be able to try some things, even if there is that possibility that they're going to fail, even if there's maybe an almost certain possibility that they're going to fail to some extent. I think the learnings that they're going to get out of that and what they're going to come back to you with, and, who they're going to be after that is still going to be worth, some of that failure that they're going to experience. So I feel like I said, you put guidelines in place, you put budget in place. And if they still want to go after having that conversation with you, after, you've told them to go out and do the research and come back to you, because a lot of times you'll find that if you give them hey, go out and do this research. I want you to talk to this number of people. I want you to go back and bring to me, kind of what the solution is. A lot of times when they go out and do their research, they'll come back to you and say, hey, I see what you're talking about. This is not going to be feasible. Maybe we don't want to go forward with it. But a lot of times they may come back and say, yeah, I can see that there's going to be some challenges, but I still want to try. I think that there still needs to be a place where a person can try some things, because to your point, sometimes, it can go the opposite way. You just don't know.
Gosh, that is really interesting. That's fascinating. I'm having this my own self-reflective point, because I think that's really powerful and valuable. I know the point I made before was I've had mentors that have told me, like, hey, don't go down this route. Like, it's not going to work that way. And I'm stubborn. I'm like, you know what? As a human, I'm inherently curious. I want to learn what's going to happen when I do this. And I realize that there's a lot of power for me to do that. But as a leader of my business, I can justify the expense of my own learning curve of learning that this was the wrong way to do it. But I also recognize my own hypocrisy in not justifying the expense of letting somebody else on my team try something that I'm fairly certain won't work. because I've done something what I thought was similar, but they needed to experience it as well. And yeah, it essentially kind of caused me to self-reflect and realize, maybe I need to budget for opportunities for my team just to try and do and learn something, even if it's a total bust, because if I don't allow my team to experiment and be curious and like scratch that itch, how can I expect them to scratch that itch when like everything goes crazy and I need innovation, I need solutions, and I can't be the only one to think of it. Right. So there's a lot of value and power in that. I think that's like a difficult pill for me to swallow. I would imagine that's a difficult pill for any executive to swallow. It's like, wow, I've potentially been hypocritical with how I've managed my team versus how I've managed myself in terms of the leeway provided for experimentation. And yeah, maybe right now it's causing me to self-reflect, think, shoot, I should be more open to allowing my team to do more things and try more things and test things out, because ultimately, like, they're way smarter than me. Like, I didn't bring them on board if they weren't smarter than me, but their experiences and knowledge from what they came in to do, and the experiences and knowledge that they're getting with me can only grow as long as they're continually experimenting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's cool. Well, Adenike, this was a very valuable lunch and learn. I know I've had a lot of really great insights from listening to you and learning from the things that you're talking about. How can our audience learn more about you? How can they connect with you? How can they reach out if they're interested in connecting and learning more about your work?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Garrett. Again, I am all over LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is probably the best way to connect with me. I also have a Facebook group where, I interact quite a bit with professionals that, who are my ideal clients. So happy to connect there as well.
Awesome. Well, Adenike, thank you so much for being here. This was an excellent lunch and learn. Everybody, thank you all for being here. I'm really grateful that you all could be here. I look forward to seeing you at our next lunch and learn. Have a great rest of your day. See you.